What's up, you guys? My name is Aubrey and this is my channel, and today I want to talk about debt, but more specifically, I want to talk about the type of debt that I feel like nobody wants to talk about, and that's whenever you have debt in collections accounts. Now, whenever you have debt that has hit a collection agency, and whenever you have the collection agency calling you on a regular basis, it brings a whole new level to stress and mental fatigue that is sometimes very hard to address in a strategic way. So in this video, I want to talk about what you can do and some real actionable items that you can take if you're somebody that is finding yourself dealing with debt in collections. So let's get started. Now, I know firsthand the negative effects that having debt in collections can have, not only on your mental state, but also your emotional state as well. It can sometimes be a really tough thing to deal with. And the unfortunate thing is the fact that I feel like this topic isn't widely talked about, at least not in a realistic and transparent way. Now, before we dig into the specifics of this video and some of the specific strategies that I've used in order to address debt collectors, I would like to reiterate that I am not a debt professional. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, I'm not an expert in this field at all. But I am somebody who has dealt with debt collectors in the past, and I do know what it's like to deal with this scenario from firsthand experience. So take my advice with a grain of salt, as I am not an expert, I am simply just somebody who has been in your shoes before. Now, with that being said, let's dig into the very first tip that I have, and that is that all debt is not created equal, at least not when it comes to your credit score. Now, what I mean by this is that certain debts will have certain impacts on your credit score. Whenever you have a brand new debt that has been sent to collections, it will have an immediate negative effect on your credit score. Now, of course, that debt has probably already been reported on your credit history. For example, if you have a credit card that you've fallen behind on, those late payments are going to have a negative impact on your credit score. But nothing is going to be quite as severe as the moment that that debt is sent to collections. Now, once the debt is sent to collections and on an ongoing basis, the effect that has on your credit score is somewhat minimal, at least long term. You get that initial decline from whenever it's first reported in collections, but then the negative impact seems to decrease over time, and it doesn't seem as substantial on a month-by-month basis. And so because of this, I think it's important whenever you're addressing debt that's in collections to address the newest debt first, to try to catch the debt before it gets into collections, and thus before it gets that huge hit on your credit score. And so in order to do this strategically, what I encourage you to do is if you find yourself in a lot of debt, I would take the time to sit down and to figure out exactly what debt you have and with what companies this debt is with. Sit down and figure out what debt is already in collections and what debt has already negatively affected your credit score in a significant way, and then sit down and figure out what debt has not significantly impacted your credit score yet, but which one could in the very near future. The debt that has not had a substantial impact on your credit score yet is the debt that should be prioritized first. You want to try to catch the debt before it hits your credit score, pay it off, and then you'll avoid the huge hit that comes with a collections account. On the same note, sometimes if you call companies that you have debt with and you work out a payment plan before it's into collections, this is a great way to avoid collections as a whole. You can contact the company, you can say that you fell behind on your bills, give them some sort of explanation as to why you have not paid the debt off, and then you can say, I can't pay the entire thing off in full right now, but can we work a payment plan? There are a lot of companies and a lot of scenarios that will take you up on that offer. This is a great way to avoid the collection account from hitting your profile and thus negatively impacting your credit score. It's a great way to avoid having to deal with collection agencies, and it's a great way to just deal with the company you have the debt with one-on-one. Next, and on a very similar note, is how to go about paying your debt. If you have a debt that has hit your credit score and it's in a collections account, you should always try to negotiate a pay for delete. What this means is that if you pay the debt in full, the company will delete it off of your credit history as a whole. So it's basically like it never happened. Typically, whenever the mark is deleted from your profile, your credit score will then go back to the point that it was before that mark hit your profile to begin with. Sometimes this is a 30 to 50 point increase depending on the type of collection. Now, when tackling a pay for delete, I would encourage you to call up whatever collection agency your debt is with and to ask them directly, how much money do I need to pay towards this debt today in order to have it deleted off of my report? Oftentimes they will say that you need to pay the entire thing in full today in order to have it be deleted. But sometimes there will be a different amount that they can negotiate in order to have you pay, and then they'll delete it off your history. Oftentimes there is a required figure that you have to pay in order to have it deleted off of your profile, and sometimes this number is not negotiable at all. If this number is a number that you can afford and that you can pay in full right then and there, I would highly encourage you to do that, because the quicker you get this dealt with, the quicker it will be released off of your credit score. And sometimes if a debt has been sitting in collections for a very long time, they will take away the option for pay for delete as a whole. So it's very important to, at the very least, contact a collection agency as soon as you notice a debt has been reported to collections. That way you can at least see if a pay for delete is an option. And if this is an option, it's an option that you should absolutely prioritize and pay as soon as you possibly can. The third tip I have is to always negotiate your debt. This is incredibly important, and I feel like far too many people don't do this. The fact is that once a collection agency has your debt, they have paid pennies on the dollar for that debt. When it comes to negotiating your debt, there's a few things to keep in mind. Number one is to never offer a figure upfront that you're willing and able to pay. You don't want to negotiate with yourself, so leave it up to the collection agency to give you an amount that you could pay and then negotiate from that figure. The way that you could do this is by simply calling up the collection agency and asking them how much you could pay. You could say, hey, I noticed that I had a collection with you guys. I'm not able to pay the full amount today, but how much do I need to pay in order to get this taken off my credit report? And oftentimes the person that you're on the phone with will give you some sort of figure. Maybe they'll say $500, and your response could be, well, I can't pay $500 today, but I could pay $300. Now, oftentimes when it comes to negotiating your debt, it's not really up to the person that you're on the phone with. And oftentimes these figures that the company is allowed to accept are determined by an algorithm or some sort of equation that they use based off of the total amount that you owe. So whenever you are on the phone, it's important to keep that in mind, that it's really not up to the person you're talking to, but it is your job in order to try to get the lowest rate possible. And oftentimes, whatever figure you throw out, the person on the phone will counter and say, well, I'm authorized to allow you to pay X amount of dollars today and we'll take it off of your report. Additionally, oftentimes debt collectors will offer a wide variety of different payment methods and payment plans. For example, if you had a $10,000 debt, maybe the debt collector will say, if you pay a one-time payment of $4,000, we'll call it even. Or they may offer the option of doing installments of like 5 payments or 10 payments or 20 payments, whatever the case is. 99% of the time, the debt collector will offer a wide variety of different payment plans in order for you to pay off your debt. But more often than not, the cheapest way will end up being in one lump sum. And that oftentimes is the most advantageous way to approach your debt if you're able to afford it. Another great way to approach payment plans is to contact the company that you had the debt with before it hits collections. This means that you can avoid the big hit that a collection account has on your credit score, and you can negotiate some sort of payment plan with the company directly. This is advantageous for a number of different reasons. Number one, you're not dealing with a collection agency that is making a ton of money off of your debt. Number two is that the original company that you had your debt with wants to make their money back. They don't want to have to send your debt to collections. So more often than not, they will be willing to negotiate on some sort of payment plan. Now, granted, you probably will have to pay the entire thing in full, but you can do it in installments rather than one lump sum. For example, this is super common with credit cards. If you have a credit card that you have debt with, you can call up the credit card company, you can negotiate some sort of payment plan. You'll typically have to sign some sort of agreement saying that you'll pay every single month, and if you miss a payment, it'll get sent to collections. There typically is some sort of an agreement to sign. But if you're able to afford it, approaching your original debtor and negotiating a payment plan is a really great way to approach your debt, because you don't have to deal with collection agencies and you can really solve the problem before it becomes a huge issue on your credit score. My fourth tip is to prioritize the companies that you want to have relationships with in the future. Now, this tip may sound a bit odd, but as far as like real life applications, I think that it's so incredibly important. If you have a debt with a company, like let's say AT&T, or let's say a credit card company or some sort of lender, and if you default on that loan and you never pay it back, chances are they will never allow for you to be a customer with them again. Now, this on the surface may not seem like it's that big of a deal, but it can actually have a really significant impact later on. Let's say you have a bank or you have a credit card that you like working with, but you're falling behind on that bill. If you end up defaulting on that, you'll never be able to use that credit card company again. And if that company has really great points, like airline points or hotel points or just cashback points, you'll never be able to take advantage of that program. Alternatively, if it's like a service like AT&T, for example, that could potentially hinder you from getting TV service later on down the road. Now, I know on the surface this may not seem like that big of a deal, but the fact is it can have some significant repercussions later on down the road, especially depending on what your financial situation and what your goals are for your life later on once you're out of debt. And if you default on a credit card specifically, it doesn't matter if you have an 800 credit score in 10 years, they still don't want you as a customer. Now, I know that in a perfect world, you would pay off all of your debt and none of your debts would go into delinquency. But the fact is, this world is imperfect. And sometimes you're not able to pay off all your debts. And sometimes some debts go into delinquency, they're never paid back. So if you're somebody who's fighting that battle of which debts are going to go into delinquency and which ones are going to stay there, make sure to be mindful of the fact that this could affect you 20, 30, 40 years down the line, regardless of your financial situation at that time. time. Now, with that being said, you guys, I know that this is a tough topic to navigate because it's so much easier to talk about getting out of debt than it is to actually get out of debt. But with that being said, I have been in your shoes. And if you're somebody who's in debt, if you're somebody who has collection agencies calling you, just know that I know how you feel. And all of these tips that I've talked about in this video could definitely be helpful and applicable to you in your debt situation. With that being said, you guys, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you have anything to add, make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.